Commander Riley Ward had trained for many strange moments in his military career, but nothing in his past could have prepared him for the royal hall of the Cerulean matriarchy. The hall looked like it had been carved from living crystal. Tall walls shimmered with soft light, glowing with colors he could not name. Everything around him felt large, too large, for the size of a human. It was as if a cathedral had been designed by giants, for giants, and in truth it had. The Ceruleans were enormous compared to humans. The average one stood 3 meters tall. Their limbs were long and graceful, their skin a smooth blue sheen that looked like polished stone. And at the center of the hall, seated on an elevated throne carved from pure cobalt crystal, sat their ruler, Queen Vasha the matriarch. Riley had done his best to appear calm when he walked in. He wore his formal armor, the dark silver plates fitted tightly to his body, smooth and polished. The armor was a diplomatic model, supposedly safe, supposedly harmless. He had been told it only had one active system, Aegis, a basic personal defense field. Or so he believed. Riley approached the negotiation table, a massive structure made for Ceruleans, not humans. He had to climb onto the chair, which made a few Cerulean guards blink in amusement. His legs dangled slightly from the edge. It looked ridiculous, but Riley ignored the feeling. He had dealt with worse. Queen Vasha stood, her tall form towering over him like a moving mountain. "Welcome, Commander Riley of Earth," she said, her voice echoing warmly. "Today we attempt peace. Let us make this meeting a friendly one." "I hope so," Riley replied. His voice came out steady, even though the scale of everything around him made him feel like he had walked into a children's fairy tale where all the giants were real. Diplomats lined the sides of the hall. Cerulean scientists, military leaders, and advisors all watched him with curious eyes. Some whispered among themselves, probably discussing why a species as small as humans had sent only one representative. Humans were new to the galactic stage. Many alien nations had dismissed them as weak, simple, or unimportant. Only a few knew the truth, that humans were unpredictable, inventive, and tough in ways that didn't always make sense. Still, most Ceruleans believed humans needed to prove themselves. Queen Vasha tried to show goodwill. She gave Riley a wide, toothless smile, the Cerulean version of friendly humor. Then she walked toward the negotiation table and stopped beside him. "Your chair," she said, looking at the human-sized seat attached to the Cerulean one. "So tiny," she turned to her advisors. "How do humans balance on such small objects?" Some of her guards chuckled. To Riley, it was innocent teasing. Cerulean humor often involved size jokes. Humans were used to it. He gave a polite smile. But the Queen wanted to take the humor further. Ceruleans loved physical comedy, and in her culture, sitting near someone, or even briefly on top of someone, was a common joke among friends. She thought it would break the tension. She moved to sit down in her massive ceremonial chair, but Riley didn't notice she was turning. At the same moment, he leaned forward to reach a datapad on the table, shifting slightly on his seat. Because of the size difference, and because the chairs were attached, the movement lined up perfectly wrong. Vasha lowered herself onto her chair, and ended up sitting partly on Riley's armored shoulder and back. There was a deep whoomp sound, and then everything went wrong. For a moment there was silence. Every Cerulean froze. Riley, pressed against the seat under a portion of her weight, let out a surprised gasp. It didn't hurt. Ceruleans were large, but light for their size. The real problem wasn't physical. The problem was Riley's armor. The moment the pressure hit his back plate, something inside his suit woke up. A sound like cracking ice filled the hall as a glowing field shot outward in a perfect sphere. White-blue energy rippled across the air, expanding faster than anyone could react. The impact wasn't harmful, but it was overwhelming. Every cerulean in the room staggered. Papers flew. Crystals hummed. Several guards dropped their weapons as they were pushed back by the shock wave. Even Queen Vasha lifted slightly off the chair, startled, before landing again with a confused rumble. Riley felt heat rise behind his eyes. His suit's HUD lit up with flashing red text. Aegis Protocol activated threat level 7 target. Cerulean matriarchy countdown initiated. What? No, 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 not that system! Riley shouted, scrambling to stand up. His legs were shaking from the energy release. The force field had protected him, but it also drained half his suit's battery in an instant. Queen Vasha rose to her full height, her eyes wide with shock. What was that? Riley didn't answer. He was too busy fighting with his armor controls. The cerulean guards rushed forward, then hesitated, unsure if getting close would trigger another blast. Scientists whispered fearfully, already analyzing the strange energy signature. "I thought your armor was only diplomatic," cried one of the cerulean advisors. "So did I," Riley snapped. "This wasn't supposed to happen. Aegis is defensive only. It shouldn't be reacting like this." But the display on his visor disagreed. Response sequence locked. Orbital activation in 10 hours. Neutralize threat. Matriarchy capital zone. Queen Vasha's voice trembled, not with fear, but with shock and guilt. Was this triggered because I sat on you? Riley pressed buttons on his wrist panel. Nothing worked. Yes, but not because of you personally. The armor sensed heavy pressure and flagged it as an attack. It's not your fault. It was not an attack, she said quickly. It was a joke, a ceremonial joke. Human tech doesn't understand jokes, Riley groaned. It only understands physics. More ceruleans began to panic. Some ran to the edges of the hall. Others pulled out data pads, trying to read the strange human signals. Riley tapped the command port on his chest. "Aegis, disable." The suit responded in a cold, mechanical voice. "Request denied. Human biometrics elevated. Stress detected. Clearance insufficient." "Stress? Of course I'm stressed," he yelled at the suit. Queen Vasha lowered herself until she was eye level with him. This time she moved slowly, carefully, with her hands raised. "Commander Riley, what does this countdown mean?" "What happens in 10 hours? Riley swallowed hard. "The Aegis system wakes human orbital defenses, old ones, really old ones, from before the Alliance even knew humans existed." He looked around at the towering aliens watching him. "If I don't stop it, there's going to be a planetary lockdown, orbital barriers, energy nets, automated response platforms. And these platforms," Vasha said quietly, "will attack us." "They don't ask questions," Riley said. "If Aegis says there's danger, they respond." Silence fell over the hall, a silence filled with fear. Riley steadied his breath. "I can stop it. I just need calm. I need access to your data center. And your scientists, and possibly your power grid. It's complicated." The Queen straightened. Her face shifted into the expression ceruleans used for solemn decisions. "Then we will help you. Whatever you need." Riley nodded. "Good. Because if we fail—" He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The aliens understood. But even as Queen Vasha prepared to mobilize every expert she had, something else happened, something no one noticed yet. Far beyond the palace walls, in the dark, cold space near the star system's edge, a tiny metal shape opened its eyes. The Aegis signal reached it like a beacon. It turned toward the capital planet, and hundreds more began to turn with it. The Cerulean Data Center was the most advanced structure on the planet, but as Commander Riley Ward entered it, he realized something important. It was not built for humans. Everything was huge. The control tables were taller than he was. Screens stretched all the way to the ceiling. Even the chairs looked like small vehicles instead of something a person could sit in. Cerulean scientists walked around him in long, graceful strides, their blue skin glowing under the white lights. Riley almost had to jog to keep up with Queen Vasha, whose footsteps echoed like soft drums across the glass floor. "This way," Vasha said, pointing toward a glowing platform. "We will connect your armor's data port to our network so we can study the Aegis protocols." "Good," Riley said, breathing fast but steady, "because we're already running out of time." The counter in his helmet display ticked down in bright red digits. 09-12-07. Less than 9.5 hours before the ancient human defense system activated. And if that happened, the Cerulean capital, along with every ship, shield, or satellite in orbit, would be locked inside a deadly human-made barrier. Vasha led him to a giant, circular console. It pulsed with lights that moved like liquid through its surface. Cerulean scientists gathered around, each one holding a glowing tile that functioned as their version of a tablet. One of them, a tall female scientist named Yeri, stepped forward. "Commander Riley, your armor uses neural encryption. We cannot access it directly. Can you manually open the code?" Riley let out a tired laugh. "If I could, none of this would be happening." Yeri tilted her head, confused. "Humans built it, did they not?" "Technically, yes," Riley said, "but Aegis isn't normal tech. It was built by the first expedition era, a time before humans had alliances, a time when they were scared of everything out there in the dark. It was made to protect us from enemies we didn't understand. And now it believes we are the enemy," Vasha said quietly. Riley nodded. Vasha placed her hand gently beside him on the console. Careful, slow, respectful. After the accidental trigger in the throne room, she treated every movement around him like handling something delicate. "Commander," she said, "whatever help you need, we will give." "All right," Riley said, rubbing the side of his helmet. "I need your best quantum code breakers. I need access to your star charts, and I need a tall chair." "A chair?" Vasha repeated. "Yes," Riley said seriously, "because I can't keep climbing your furniture. My legs are starting to shake." A few Ceruleans exchanged glances. Then Vasha clapped her hands. Within minutes, a team brought out a platform lift normally used for small machines. They raised it to match the height of the console. Riley sighed in relief and stepped onto it. "Better," he muttered. "Let's get to work." The next hour passed in a blur of lights, sounds, and tension. Yeri projected a giant hologram of Riley's armor schematic. Cerulean and human symbols mixed together in glowing blue and red patterns. Several scientists murmured in surprise as they studied the design. "It looks like the armor is alive," said one Cerulean engineer. "It reacts like a neural organism." "It's not alive," Riley answered, "but it does think. Or at least, it decides." Yeri tapped her tile. "The Aegis system recognizes changes in pressure, danger, and emotional response. When the Queen sat down and pressed the back of your armor, it thought I was under attack," Riley finished. "And because your stress rose," Yeri added, "it locked into emergency mode." Vasha bowed her head. "I did not intend harm. It was a simple joke." Riley shook his head. "Your joke didn't cause the problem. The armor did. Humans made this thing too paranoid." A new alarm chimed. Riley looked at the timer. M44-33. Time was slipping fast. He took in a deep breath. "Everyone listen. We have two options. Either we shut down Aegis or we override it. To shut it down, we need the master code." "Do you know the code?" Yeri asked. "Not even close," Riley said. "Only the High Command back on Earth knows it. And before you ask, no, we can't contact them. Human defense codes block outside transmissions when Aegis is active." Even Queen Vasha looked worried now. "What about the override?" she asked. "We'd need to manually access the Aegis core inside the armor," Riley said, "which is risky. The core is old, unstable tech. If we poke it wrong, it might assume you're all attacking me and, well..." The room grew silent. Vasha finished his sentence softly. "It will not respond gently." Riley exhaled. "Yeah." Still, he stepped onto the console platform and placed his hand on his chest plate. "But we don't have a choice. Aegis isn't just waking the orbital defenses. It's broadcasting a beacon, calling out. And I don't know what's listening." Yeri blinked. "Is something listening?" Riley didn't answer immediately. He stared at the giant star map floating in the room. A flicker of movement caught his eye, an orange dot near the system's edge. "What's that?" he asked. Yeri zoomed the map. "A small anomaly, a metallic signal. It appeared 20 minutes ago. Possibly a stray drone." "No," Riley said quietly, a cold feeling in his chest. "That's not stray." The Ceruleans watched him with concern. "You humans know this object?" Vasha asked. Riley nodded slowly. "Not exactly, but I know the type." He pointed at the floating dot. "That's a machine swarm scout." The Ceruleans stiffened. Everyone had heard the legends, ancient mechanical predators drifting through space, silent and patient, feeding on energy signals. Most believed they were extinct. "You are sure?" Vasha asked carefully. "As sure as I can be without visuals," Riley said. "Aegis broadcasted a huge energy pulse when it activated. Something must have sensed it." "Is it dangerous?" Yeri whispered. "Extremely," Riley answered. "And it's only the scout. If it sends a signal back, the whole swarm will come." The hall suddenly felt much colder. Vasha stepped forward, voice firm. "Then we must shut down Aegis. Now." "Yes," Riley agreed. "Before the swarm thinks you attacked a human ship." He knelt, touching his armor. Inside, he could feel the core humming, a strange vibration, like a heartbeat that wasn't his own. The armor reacted to his touch, glowing faintly. "Aegis," he whispered. "You need to trust me. I'm not in danger. These aliens aren't enemies. They're allies." The armor's AI responded with cold text on his visor. "Threat level, unchanged protocol, unbreakable human safety, priority 1. Riley gritted his teeth. "This thing is so stubborn." Vasha leaned close, careful not to cast a shadow over him. "Commander Riley, what can we do?" "Give me access to your energy conduit," Riley said. "I need to connect Aegis to your planetary grid. Maybe I can force it into diagnostic mode." Yeri's eyes widened. "Connect human military tech to our grid? That is extremely dangerous." Riley's voice was calm but firm. "So is having your planet flagged as hostile." The scientists exchanged worried glances, but Vasha stepped forward and placed her hand on the console. "Connect it," she ordered. Yeri hesitated, then obeyed. Several Ceruleans activated the conduits. Blue streams of energy flowed through the floor and into a tall, cylindrical pillar. Riley moved to it and pressed a panel on his arm. His armor cables extended, locking into the conduit with a bright click. A surge of light exploded across the room. Riley gasped, electricity running up his spine. His vision blurred, then stabilized. The armor's systems opened more lines of code than he had ever seen. "It's working," he whispered. Yeri stared in amazement. "The energy is expanding the interface." Vasha stepped forward. "Can you override it?" Riley's hands shook slightly as he typed commands into his wrist panel. "I'm trying. I think I can—" "Wait!" His visor flashed. External entity detected. Riley froze. "That's not possible," he muttered. Yeri swallowed. "The scout?" "No," Riley said slowly. "Bigger." The star map updated automatically. One orange dot had become 5, then 10, then 20. Queen Vasha's voice grew quiet. "They are coming." Riley's heart pounded as the armor vibrated harder. He understood now. The swarm wasn't just listening. It was already answering the call. "We have less time than we thought," Riley said. "Much less." Vasha looked at him with a mixture of fear and hope. "What do we do, Commander?" Riley lifted his head. "Everything we can." The Cerulean data center felt strangely quiet after the alarm stopped ringing. Every scientist, every guard, every technician stood frozen as they stared at the star map. The tiny orange dots, first one, then many, kept multiplying on the screen. At first there were 10, then 30, then 50. Riley felt his stomach twist. Each dot represented a mechanical predator, ancient machines that hunted energy signals in space. They weren't alive, not in the biological sense, but they behaved like it. They worked like a hive mind. If one found prey, the rest followed. And Aegis, the stubborn human defense system, had screamed out a beacon loud enough for the entire galaxy to hear. Queen Vasha finally broke the silence. "How long before they reach us?" Riley exhaled and studied the speed patterns. "If these readings are accurate, less than 5 hours." The Queen's long fingers tightened around the edge of the console. 5 hours until a swarm reaches our capital?" "Maybe less," Riley said. "They accelerate the closer they get to strong energy sources." "And our city is the strongest for light years," Yeri whispered. Riley looked at the scientist. "Your planet is rich with energy. The swarm will think it's food." That horrifying truth settled over the room like a heavy blanket. Vasha turned to Riley. "Then we must shut down Aegis at once. If we stop the beacon, perhaps they will turn away." Riley shook his head. "Not anymore." Yeri frowned. "Why not?" "Because the scout already pinged your system," Riley explained. "Once they get a signal, even for a second, the swarm uses it like a trail. They follow it until they find something." The Queen grew more serious. "Something or someone?" Riley nodded slowly. "Exactly." The Ceruleans exchanged panicked whispers, voices trembling as they spoke. Many had believed swarm stories were old myths, warnings told to children, but the cold, glowing dots on the star map made it painfully real. Vasha stepped forward and placed her hand on Riley's console platform. She met his eyes, her huge blue face calm but fierce. "Commander Riley, I trust you. Tell us what must be done." Riley didn't hesitate. "We fight." Gasps filled the room. Vasha straightened. "Fight? The swarm?" "Yes," Riley said. "Because shutting down Aegis might stop the orbital defenses, but it won't stop the swarm. They're already coming. If we do nothing, they'll tear through your world like it's scrap metal." "But our ships," Yeri began. "They'll be destroyed," Riley said. "The swarm feeds on energy. Ships are walking buffets." A Cerulean guard asked nervously, "What about your human defenses, the ones Aegis is calling?" Riley sighed. "If they activate, they'll block the planet. You'll be trapped on the surface while machines attack from above." The Queen's face went pale. "That," Riley said, "is why we fight together." The next 90 minutes were filled with urgent activity. Cerulean engineers moved through the halls like blue lightning, connecting power lines, opening sealed chambers, and loading data into giant crystalline servers. Guards rushed to the armory to gather shields and weapons. The air filled with humming machinery and overlapping voices. Riley stood at the center of the chaos, still plugged into the energy conduit, still working with his armor's ancient code. He wasn't trying to shut Aegis down now. He was trying to control it. "Come on," he muttered as the suit flashed new warning messages. "Stop resisting me." The armor's AI responded coldly again. "Human safety. Priority 1, override not allowed external threat." Rising. "No kidding," Riley muttered. "But if you keep the matriarchy flagged as hostile, you're making everything worse." Queen Vasha approached him again. She moved slower now, careful to keep her distance, showing respect for the armor's sensitivity. "Commander," she said softly, "our scientists found something." Riley paused. "What?" She gestured to Yeri, who stepped forward holding a glowing blue tile. "Our long-range scans just captured the swarm's shape. You should see this." Yeri touched the tile, and a massive hologram appeared in the air. It looked like a cloud at first, a giant cloud of metal dust. Then the image sharpened. Thousands of tiny machines, each shaped like a silver insect, floated in formation. Their wings shimmered like razor blades. Their eyes pulsed with red light, and they moved together as one being. Vasha spoke quietly. "We have never seen machines like these." Riley nodded. "Humans barely did either, only old records, rumors. Most evidence was destroyed centuries ago." "But you knew the moment you saw that scout," Vasha said. "Experience," Riley answered. "Humans used to be afraid of the dark. We made systems like Aegis because of things like them." A moment passed between them. Not fear, understanding. "Commander Riley," Vasha said, "forgive me for earlier. My joke nearly caused disaster." Riley shook his head. "You were just being friendly. Aegis is the problem." "But your people built Aegis," Vasha said. "Your kind built the shield that now threatens us." Riley looked up at the towering queen. "Humans build out of fear. Ceruleans build out of hope. That's why we need each other." Vasha's eyes softened. "Then we will stand with you." Before Riley could respond, the star map blazed with 5 new signals, bright, fast, and approaching. Yeri gasped. "New contacts!" Riley turned sharply. "What are their readings?" Yeri adjusted the display. "Large, metallic, heat signatures low. They appear to be heavy drones." Riley's face tightened. "Those are Vanguard units. The swarm sends them first to weaken defenses." Vasha placed her hand on the console. "How much time until they enter orbit?" "Maybe 90 minutes, Yeri said. "Then we prepare," Vasha declared. She turned to Riley. "Commander, can your armor be used in battle against these machines?" Riley hesitated. "Aegis can generate a defensive blast. It can shield small areas. But we can't fire it like a weapon. It's not designed for offense." Vasha nodded. "Yet you are willing to use it for us." Riley met her gaze. "You didn't leave me behind when my suit went out of control. I won't leave you behind now." The queen straightened and activated a long, glowing staff, her symbol of command. "Then humanity and the matriarchy shall fight together." A deep hum filled the room as cerulean shock troops activated their armor. Lights danced across their massive suits, forming protective patterns. Engineers connected their largest shield projectors to the palace walls. Defense towers rose from the ground outside, turning toward the sky. Riley watched the preparations and felt something ignite inside him. Pride, hope, and something else he couldn't name. "Yeri," he said, "pull up a scan of the swarm's approach vectors." Yeri nodded and opened a new display. Riley studied the pattern. "They're moving too fast. If they hit your orbit while your satellites are active, it'll trigger more Aegis responses." "Then we shut them down," Vasha said. "Not enough," Riley replied. "The swarm will break through. We need to hit them with something they don't expect." Vasha folded her arms. "Such as?" Riley smiled slightly. "A trap." The queen looked intrigued. "What kind of trap?" "A gravitational pulse," Riley said. "We use Aegis to overcharge your planet's energy field. When the swarm enters orbit, we hit them with a directional gravity spike. It won't destroy them, but it'll scatter them. Break their formation." Yeri blinked. "Commander, that could tear our power grid apart." "Or," Riley said, "it could save your world." Silence fell as the Ceruleans considered the idea. Finally, Vasha nodded. "If you believe it is possible, we will attempt it." Riley stepped off the platform and faced the approaching swarm on the star map. "I don't believe," he said quietly. "I know." Outside the palace, the skies began to darken. Cerulean guards stood atop high towers, scanning the atmosphere with long-range beacons. Giant shield projectors hummed across the city. Civilians were moved quickly into underground shelters. No one panicked. Their queen had chosen to stand, and a human, a small, stubborn, fearless human, stood with her. Riley adjusted his armor and looked up at the sky through the windows. He could feel Aegis pulsing, almost awake, almost ready. "Come on," he whispered. "Let's do this." But far above the clouds, the first shapes of the machine swarm were already descending, silent, fast, and hungry. The final storm was beginning. And Riley knew. Part 4 would decide everything. The cerulean capital grew quiet as the swarm approached. Not silent, never silent, but quiet in the way a world becomes when everyone holds their breath at the same time. Deep shields hummed under the ground. Towers glowed with white-blue light. The air felt heavy with electricity. Commander Riley Ward stood at the center of the royal balcony, Aegis armor glowing like a star trapped inside a shell. Queen Vasha stood beside him, tall and steady, her hands gripping her command staff. High above them, the sky darkened into something unnatural. The first wave of swarm drones broke through the clouds like a metal storm. Thousands, tiny insect-like machines with razor limbs, dived in perfect formation. Their red eyes blinked with cold intelligence. Vasha whispered, "They look like a plague." Riley nodded. "They always do." He checked the timer inside his visor. 01:07:55. 1 hour before the Aegis orbital defenses activated. 1 hour before the entire planet would be locked inside a field no cerulean could break. 1 hour to save everyone. "Positions!" Queen Vasha shouted. Her voice echoed through the city. Cerulean shock troops raised their shields. Defense towers locked onto targets. Massive crystalline generators hummed as the planetary grid prepared for what Riley had suggested. A gravitational pulse strong enough to scatter the swarm. Yeri's voice came through the comms, nervous but firm. "Commander, the charge is building, but if we push too far, the entire grid may collapse." "Don't worry," Riley answered. "I'll take the load." "How?" she asked. Riley looked down at his armor. Aegis pulsed against his skin with warm energy, almost like a heartbeat. "Aegis can channel the excess," he said. "That's what it was built for. I direct the charge. The grid fires when I give the signal." "Understood," Yeri said. Vasha studied Riley carefully. "This will hurt you, won't it?" Riley gave a small smile. "Probably." "And you still plan to do it?" Vasha asked softly. Riley shrugged. "Humans are weird like that." She placed a hand gently above him on the railing, not touching him, just showing silent support. "Then we fight together." The swarm launched its second wave. Drones poured through the clouds, thousands turning into tens of thousands. They moved like a river of metal, shifting direction instantly, their wings slicing through the air with a high, eerie buzz. The first drones dove toward the palace. "Shields!" Riley shouted. Cerulean troops activated their barrier. A dome of shimmering blue appeared above the palace, absorbing the first impacts. Drones exploded against it like sparks hitting water. But more came. Dozens, hundreds. The shield flickered under the pressure. Riley stepped forward and slammed his armored fist into the ground. "Aegis! Defensive burst!" his armor answered. A circle of bright white energy exploded outward from his body, pushing drones back like leaves in a hurricane. The palace shook. The ceruleans stared in awe as Riley's small human form glowed brighter than any of them had ever seen. "That should buy us a minute," Riley muttered. Vasha looked amazed. "Humans are stronger than they appear. Don't let it go to your head," Riley said. I'm just the small one wearing angry armor. But the swarm wasn't slowing. More drones broke through the atmosphere. A larger shape appeared behind them, one of the heavier swarm carriers. A dark metal sphere, the size of a shuttle, covered in spinning claws and antennae, aimed straight at the city. Yeri's voice cracked through the comms. Commander, this one is generating a signal. It's calling the rest of the swarm. Riley swore. If that carrier lands, we're finished. Vasha turned to him. Can Aegis destroy it? Not alone, Riley said. But with your grid, maybe. He raised his voice. Yeri, charge level? 73%, Yeri said. Commander, wait. If we release it now, the pulse won't be strong enough. Riley watched the massive carrier descend, dragging a trail of drones behind it like a giant comet. We don't need full power, he said. We just need precision. He slammed both hands into the balcony floor. Aegis, link to grid. The armor responded instantly. Energy surged up the palace walls, racing toward the tower tips. Riley's vision blurred. His body shook as the armor absorbed the charge. Queen Vasha stepped back as bright arcs of electricity danced around Riley's body. Commander! I'm fine! Riley shouted through clenched teeth. Just give me a second! The swarm carrier opened, revealing spinning inner rings and a pulsing red core. It aimed toward the palace. Yeri screamed over the comms. It is charging a particle burst. If it fires... It won't, Riley said. He stood up straight. His entire body glowed white-blue. Aegis hummed like a living star. Vasha! Riley yelled. Tell your troops to brace! Vasha lifted her staff and shouted the command. Brace for impact! All across the city, ceruleans dug in. Shields tightened. Towers locked down. Every eye watched the small human standing at the balcony's center, glowing brighter than the sky. Riley took one breath, one heartbeat. Aegis! Singularity pulse! The world turned white. A beam of concentrated gravitational energy exploded from Riley, spreading across the sky in a wave. The palace shook violently. The ground trembled like thunder. Ceruleans grabbed onto railings as the pulse tore upward, bending the air. The swarm carrier was hit first. Its metal body twisted like clay. Its core collapsed inward. It crumpled silently, vanishing into a microscopic point before exploding in a harmless flash of dust. Then the pulse hit the drones. Thousands were thrown off course, spinning into each other like confused insects. Many shattered. Others crashed into the ground. The entire swarm formation broke apart as if someone had ripped a hole straight through their hive-mind connection. Yes! Yeri shouted over the comms. Commander, the majority of the swarm is destabilized! Vasha watched in awe. Riley, you did it. But Riley didn't answer. His armor smoked. Sparks burst from his chest plate. His legs shook as he tried to keep standing. Aegis. Draining, Riley whispered. His visor flashed. Warning, human, vital output. Failing system overload, shutting down. Riley fell forward. But Queen Vasha caught him with both hands, careful not to trigger another burst. Easy, Commander, she said softly. Do not fall. Riley forced his eyes open. Is it over? Look, Vasha said. Together they turned their gaze to the sky. The remaining swarm drones, confused, scattered, and leaderless, fled into the upper atmosphere. Their formation was broken. Their path was lost. They moved like a dying storm, retreating into the void. The swarm was leaving. The signal was gone. The city was safe. Yeri's voice came through, shaky with relief. The swarm is pulling back. They're retreating, Commander. You broke their path. Riley smiled weakly. Told you, humans do weird things. Vasha lowered him gently to the floor. You saved us. You saved all of us. Riley looked up at her towering form. You helped. Couldn't have done it alone. The Queen bowed her head, a rare gesture of deep respect in her culture. Humanity, she said, will never be underestimated again. Hours later, as the city celebrated its unlikely survival, Queen Vasha honored Riley before the entire capital. Ceruleans cheered loudly, their voices shaking the very buildings. Riley stood on a raised platform, leaning slightly on the Queen's staff for balance. Vasha raised her voice. "Let this day be remembered," she declared, "as the day a human saved our world. This alliance, born from a mistake, strengthened by courage, shall never break." The crowd erupted with cheers. Riley raised a hand and said softly, "Next time, Your Majesty, maybe just shake hands instead of sitting down." Vasha laughed, a warm rolling sound like distant thunder. "I think," she said, "that is a good idea." And somewhere beyond the stars, the retreating swarm drifted silently, forever wary of the small species with a giant heart and a stubbornly brilliant courage. Humanity, once doubted, now stood tall.